to tell them that the Water Act provides that county government has to own 100% of shareholding in water companies. Now they have gotten interest. No, company shares, not Gachagua'S shares. You know, Senator Cheragay is a proponent of the impeached deputy president. So he wants to talk about shares all the time. It is a shareholding, company shareholding. So we have made a contribution to get these water companies to work and to work for the people of Kenya. And I hope in our next review, where we'll be looking at the audit report for the year ended June 2022, June 2023, and June 2024, we will begin to see a lot of changes in the way the water companies are managed in this country. Mr. Speaker, in concluding, I wish to register my appreciation to the Office of the Speaker, the Office of the Clerk of the Senate, and the Office of the Auditor General for facilitating the work of the committee and making the production of these reports possible. I also want to appreciate the Secretariat of the committee, and most importantly, the members of this committee for working so hard to process 80 reports for the water companies. Mr. Speaker, it was not an easy thing. We spent hours interrogating governors. We also spend hours doing the reports, and I can see two members of my committee are here, the Senator Miraj Abdullahi and Senator Ledama Olekina, who are here this morning, for the effort they put in making sure that we process this report for the first time to be tabled here in the Senate. We will also be doing the same for the remaining financial years, and hopefully through that interrogation, through that intense oversight into this report, we'll begin to see better management of water resources in our counties. Mr. Speaker, for those few remarks, I move, and I request Senator Olekina Ledama to second.
Senator Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the report on the Select Committee on County Publics and Investment Committee, the Auditor General for the financial statement for the following counties, water service providers for the financial year 2018, 2019, and 2020-2021. These counties that have already been listed by the mover of this motion, I will restrict myself to the observations that we made during the inquiry into this, the way this county manage their water resources. Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest problems is that a lot of these counties, the water companies were being run by the board without the input of the county governors. In fact, in most cases, the county governors appeared before our committee, and they raised concern as to why they were taking oath and responding to issues which they really did not understand. These water companies were being run autonomously by the board, and it brought in a lot of conflict on how they can be able to manage the resources. Yes, the CCM in charge of water and sanitation for each of the counties were represented in those boards, and they worked tirelessly to be able to set up budgets that can be able to allow them run these water companies. But the problem has already been explained by my colleague, had to do with an issue where you find in Bungoma and Trans Nzoia counties, there's one water company. You go to Kisii and Nyamira, there's one water company. So it brings in the issues of autonomy on which county can be able to generate more resources. So when we looked at that, our committee highly recommended that each of the 47 county governments have their own water companies. We also had a big issue looking at the issues of regional water bodies. The Constitution is quite clear in terms of water and sanitation. Water and sanitation are devolved to the county governments. However, if you look at the third schedule of the Constitution, the national government also has a role to play when it comes to the issue of protecting water sources, securing sufficient residual water, hydraulic engineering, and safety of dams. When we sit in this House, Mr. Speaker, we also confuse the whole process. Because I remember there was, during the time when we were interrogating these counties on how they're managing their water resources, there was a Water Act which was being amended. And if you notice, the proponent of that Water Act were moving away all the functions of managing even local companies to the national government. So that brought in a huge conflict. And I think it's about time that all of us now look at how we can be able to really fight for devolution. One of the key recommendations of our committee was that each of the 47 counties have got to look at their resources so that we can avoid this non-revenue water. They look at what they need from these regional bodies, but ultimately work towards managing their own resources. My colleague has already elaborated clearly on the losses that each of these companies were getting. There was a lot of unaccounted for water, and this unaccounted for water came in as a result of dilapidated infrastructure because there's so many leakages, so many leakages. So when you come to a situation where two counties share one company, and then water is bought from another company or from another county, by the time the water gets there, if you calculate how much was sold to those companies versus how much they generate after they sell the water, you'll realize that there's so much losses, which also led to a lot of financial mismanagement. When we are looking at the case of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, it was very difficult to be able to tell how much was that company earning. In fact, some of these companies ended up just being, sort of like corruption's dens, where people who work in these companies end up just setting their side water companies, buying water bowsers, so that they can be able to sell, because the mismanagement in the companies that were running water services was so high such that it was impossible to be able to ensure sufficient water supply. And this is a function of the national government. The national government has got to ensure that there is a sufficient sustainability of water supply to all the counties. So, Mr. Speaker, this was the first time that this Senate was looking at these water bodies. There's still a lot of work that ought to be done, quite a lot of work. And one of our recommendations was that, and I don't know whether that recommendation found itself in the report, is that each of the 47 county senators must now be able to interact on a very close watch with the water companies to ensure that these water companies, first of all, understand their budgets. Secondly, that the county governments allocate budgets to them. But these water companies must also be run to be able to produce enough water, which is sustainable to be able to provide for all the citizens of these sub-counties. And on top of that, we also have to deal with the issue of sanitation. You'll find that some companies only deal with the supply of water. But when it comes to the issue of sewage and sanitation, it is left for programs to be funded by the World Bank. We have to be very clear that these are our responsibilities. Today, Mr. Speaker, you'll understand that there's a lot of shift on the role that the World Bank and the IMF plays in countries. Burkina Faso, as a country, the ruler of that country has said no to the support of IMF. IMF continue to rate our countries. In fact, today, a friend of mine sent me a small note and said, this is what is important to us, where the IMF has already downgraded Kenya and has portrayed a very dark future for Kenya, just because we want to be able to control ourselves. So this trickles down. So our water companies must now be the responsibilities of the county governors, because the county governor is the CEO of that county. And if the CEO does not know how the waters are being run in those counties, it becomes very problematic. We now have a ministry on the blue economy. I think it is important that those water companies and that Ministry for Blue Economy work together to be able to set up huge dams, to be able to ensure that we have reservoirs. We have a big problem when it comes to Nairobi, as an example. The water from Nairobi comes from, I believe, Murang'a, or maybe the next county, and it passes through, and there are counties that do not have water, so the water comes here. So we need to now start asking ourselves, how do we ensure that there is sufficient water that can be able to sustain the residents of Nairobi by investing in big water reservoirs? This is a responsibility of the national government. If the national government can just take the third schedule, or is it the fourth schedule, and look at what their role is, and they put resources there, then we can be able to make a lot of difference. Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate again on the importance of each of the 47 counties establishing their own water companies, and they run them as a resource. They realign their own existing resources. We have a lot of water is washed away. Some of us who are farmers, we tap this water. If you go along most of the riverbanks, you will see people using the water which eventually will drain into the lake and using it for irrigation. We can as well encourage county governments to be able to establish water reservoirs where they can be able to tap into this water. So this is a resource that we can be able to, once we realign just our small existing resources, we can be able to ensure that it supports our population. Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate again on the importance of legislations. When we draft legislations or legislations are proposed in this House, we have to be cognizant of the fact that our Constitution have devolved certain functions. Water and sanitation, fully devolved. These water bodies, or regional water bodies, should actually be working with the national government to be able to develop policies, but not to now start running the distribution of water in the county governments. During the time when we were interrogating these water companies, we also spent a lot of our time talking to the regional bodies. There was a huge conflict between Kajiado County, Makueni County, coming all the way to the river when it comes to the issue of Lolturesh, which is a water source. That water, historically, was piped from Lolturesh, which is down Kajiado South, to come and water flower farms in Kitengela. So the residents of that area, Makueni County, were not getting any water. The residents of Kajiado were not getting any water. So it's important that we look at our own resources. And first of all, before we send that water to serve other people, we make sure that we serve ourselves first. Mr. Speaker, if you and I travel today, the first thing we are told on an airplane is that you need to buckle up first. And even if you have a child, protect yourself first before you do what? You protect that child. So I think we need to be able to take this logic in terms of when it comes to the issue of running our own resources. There is no reason as to why Kajiado County should actually, residents of Kajiado County should stay without water, because that water is going in to support people of the river. There's absolutely no reason as to why the people of Makueni should not be able to benefit from the Mzima Springs, because all that water is going downstream to be able to support Mombasa County. I think we can be able to share these resources. We don't give out all the resources. In fact, even in the Bible says that the poor man is the one who gives out all his wealth and is left begging. I'm not a preacher, but I remember that. And it applies clearly on how we run our resources. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to conclude by stating the following. One, each one of us here must now start taking our job very seriously when it comes to the issue of managing our resources. If you take some time and you read the Auditor General report, you'll be shocked. There's a lot of mismanagement of the little resources that we have in the country. A lot of mismanagement. Whatever happens at the county headquarters also happens in those small companies that are open to run our resources. We must also now bite the bullet, Mr. Speaker. Each of our 47 county delegations here must engage county governors to be able to re-examine and carry out an audit of our water infrastructure. Because there's no point of us buying a lot of water from nearby counties, and then all that water is lost because of leakages, dilapidated infrastructure, which some of them actually end up being carcinogenic. So it's important that we'd rather do, even if we are to get any grants from the national government, those grants are utilized properly. There's so much that people can eat. But really, if you want to jeopardize even the supply of your water because you want to get a tender and line your own pocket, we just need to rethink how we want to live our life. These boards, Mr. Speaker, must now also, we must change the law to ensure that the people who serve on these boards have got experience on managing water companies. There's no point of rewarding our friends. We need to now start introducing the concept of meritocracy. Have people who understand the importance of this resource. If it's taken care of, how well it's going to be able to support this current generation and future generation. So the boards, we must make sure that we use a competitive process, appoint people who have got a background in water and sanitation, so that they can be able to make infrastructure that will be able to outlive them. Financial management, Mr. Speaker. It is imperative that the CCM in charge of finance of each of the 47 counties, CCM in charge of water, who is now and the CEOs in charge of water, who is the accounting officer, their role must be very clear when it comes to managing these semi-autonomous companies. It is not the board which will have all the responsibilities. I think the CEO of finance should be tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that they go through the accounts of each of these counties, water bodies, so that when those counties appear before an oversight body, even the governors will be able to be in the know. Most governors have got no clue on what is happening. In conclusion, I hope that when it comes to passing this legislation, we can all be very selfish and protect devolution. Let the national government handle policy work, but when it comes to the issue of implementation of the legislation, that should be the role of county government. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to second.
Now, honorable senators, I propose the question that the Senate adopts the reports of the Select Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds on its consideration of the audit reports for the year ended 30th June 2019, 30th June 2020, and 30th June 2021 of the following water service providers. 1. Amatsi Water Services Company Limited, Vihiga County. Bomet Water Company Limited, Bomet County. Gusii Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Kisii/Nyamira Counties. Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Kisumu County. Kwale Water and Sewerage Company Limited, Kwale County, and Nyeri Water and Sanitation Company Limited in Nyeri County. And the audit report of the Wajir Water and Sewerage Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2021, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 23rd of November 2023. Now, honorable senators, this motion is open for debate, and I will call upon the members who have requested to speak to this particular motion. I'll start with Senator Danson Buya Mugatana.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to make my contribution on the audit reports of the various counties that have been mentioned there, including Amatsi Water, Bomet Water, Gusii Water, Kisumu, Kwale, and Nyeri Water and Sanitation Companies. Mr. Speaker, before I make my contribution, I wish to join other leaders in extending my best wishes to the students of Tana River County who are sitting their exams, and for the rest of Kenya, wishing them well and wishing them the very best. We all pass through there, so just take heart and do the best you can, and God will be with you. Mr. Speaker, secondly, I wanted to acknowledge the industry hard work that has been put by the chair of this committee. Mr. Speaker, they have done a tremendous job as a team, and I have appeared before them when Tana River was appearing, and I know that we have a very capable chairman, Ososi, Vice Chairman, Professor Ojienda, and the rest of the team. We thank you because you have made this Senate proud. Mr. Speaker, many issues have been raised about the companies that have been mentioned and whose report is before this Senate for consideration. Mr. Speaker, I want to probably pick two issues so that I can focus my attention on those issues. Mr. Speaker, there's a big complaint amongst Kenyan people that there's no water on their taps. And Mr. Speaker, I remember many years ago when the reforms of water were underway. At that time, the Minister for Water was the very Honorable Martha Karua. And she brought this idea to Parliament at that time, that we need to segregate these companies. We need to create water companies. We need to create water bodies that are going to be able to manage water in various levels. Some of them were at regional, and some of them were national. Obviously, from those days to date, a lot of changes have taken place, Mr. Speaker. But the principle remains the same, that if this water is managed at a lower level, and in this case, at the county level, then we should be able to have people who have a feeling for the people, who are directly connected, who will not steal the money for water, mismanage the resources for water, so that the county can have water flowing in the taps. Mr. Speaker, this has been a challenge everywhere. And we have been told, Mr. Speaker, that one of the problems is that, and when we speak to the management, like the one in Tana River, they tell you we still depend on the old infrastructure. And Mr. Speaker, the infrastructure that has been there is the one that was built by the county governments, not county government, county councils, Mr. Speaker. And county councils have been gone for more than 10 years. But still these water companies depend on that infrastructure. And Mr. Speaker, we therefore have this challenge of non-revenue water. Non-revenue water has been told by our able chairman when moving, is that water which nobody can account for. It is there, it has been utilized, but nobody can account for it. So, Mr. Speaker, we have also been told that these companies are 100% owned by the county governments, which effectively means, Mr. Speaker, that for the infrastructure to be upgraded, for the infrastructure to be where we want it to be, the new investment must be put into the infrastructure of water. Mr. Speaker, it's not enough for us to just blame the management of these water companies. We must start thinking of solutions. Mr. Speaker, for new money to be put in these water bodies, then it means, Mr. Speaker, we must start thinking of a way of ring-fencing some money which comes from the Senate to go down to the governors, and they be told that this money is for water, and you cannot touch this money. Mr. Speaker, if we could develop that kind of legislation, that is one way forward, and we must start thinking around that issue. Because it appears that if that is not done, like one of our senators here has said, it's the same money, the money goes to the county revenue fund, and the same county revenue fund is used to pay for trips by governors, officials of the counties, and so on. And the money doesn't reach for development of water. Even where they have collected something, you find that that money doesn't go there. Mr. Speaker, we had the same problems with dispensaries and health centers. And you remember, Mr. Speaker, when we were passing the laws that involved the universal healthcare laws, we said that some money needs to be left at the dispensary level, at the health center level, so that if a fence has broken down, the local committee there is able to deal with that matter. If it is a car that has a puncture, the local committee is able to withdraw money from the revenues they are developing, they are collecting there, and do something about it. Mr. Speaker, what is so difficult about us also creating some serious thinking following that model around ring-fencing money for water, so that money we vote here can go down there, yes, to the governors, who are the people who are supposed to, by law, arrange the budgets. But in between, some money be ring-fenced for water, so that infrastructure of water can grow. Because no matter what we say, Mr. Speaker, no matter what we do, if the infrastructure of water that we want to use in 2024 is the same infrastructure in Tana River County, for example, that was set up in 1960s by the Tana River County Council, it will never work, Mr. Speaker. We must start thinking as a Senate of a way of pushing money so that infrastructure can be upgraded. Mr. Speaker, there's another thought also that we need to think, because this is a house of ideas. Mr. Speaker, 100%, we have been told, is owned by, the shares are owned by the county governments. So in Tana River County, Tawasco is owned 100% by the county government of Tana River. And Mr. Speaker, the county government of Tana River will tell you we don't have money to invest for infrastructure. Money is being delayed from coming from the national government. Our equitable share is little. Tana River government will tell you we do not have sufficient funds to do fresh investments. Then, Mr. Speaker, why can't we start focusing on finding a way within the law to unlock that 100% shareholding? Why can't we think of privatizing part of those shares so that those who are interested in investing in water can come in and take over management? They can buy in 30% shares within the companies. They can buy in 40%. They be present in the management and in the boards of our county boards for water. So that, Mr. Speaker, a person who even may be benevolent, if you've made your money, maybe you made your money abroad, or you made your money in legal practice, or you made your money in investment elsewhere, or whatever you do, and then you wish to purchase shares within the water companies of your county, and you become a shareholder because you want to do something for your county. Mr. Speaker, if you have reached that level where 100 million shillings is not an issue with you, 500 million is not an issue, and you want to retire, and you feel like you want to do something special, Mr. Speaker, it is possible. We must find a way in which we can create law that allows even benevolent investors to put in money within our water companies. So that, Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't be, I pity some of our managers in these water companies. They'll come before Chairman Ososi and tell them, we are angling for World Bank to give us this money. We are angling for, I don't know what other grants to get, so we need to meet this and this and this and this and this and this requirement. When you look at it, the money they are angling for is 50 million, is 100 million. You know, Mr. Speaker, and they come to Nairobi, they tell you, help us achieve this and the other, and it is money that many Kenyans here can raise if the law allowed them. And then we have this attitude that it's only Muzungu money that will be able to save us. So people keep on talking about monies from out, monies from out, monies from out. In the meantime, there's a lot of money here within this country, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Somalia, which, if properly structured, can be put into these water companies, and we'll be able to improve infrastructure, and our people will be happy to pay those reasonable bills if they're having the service, Mr. Speaker, because this is the problem. Nobody wants to pay water bills. Why? Why? Because there is no water that flows through your tap, and the next time the water flows through your tap, they bring you a bill for all the months that the water never flowed through your tap. We had an experience, Mr. Speaker, in Tana River County. When the head of state was visiting, suddenly water started flowing in the taps. Head of state visits, Mr. Speaker. Water started flowing in the taps. You know, it shouldn't be that way, Mr. Speaker. And if the problem is investment, then we should create opportunities for people to invest in infrastructure so that these monies can be used by management to create opportunities for our water bodies to function. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I would like to also say that water bodies, even with the difficulties that they're experiencing, audit is showing us in this Senate that there are some water companies that are just doing the wrong things, you know, just wrong things. And some of these are not difficult to comply with. The law, the National Cohesion Integration Act, Mr. Speaker, has said that if within that county there are some majority tribes, you make sure that 30% should not be occupied by one tribe alone, so that the other people can have opportunities, Mr. Speaker, to be employed. Now, we have many water companies, Mr. Speaker, that have totally ignored these rules. And in this report, Gusii Water Company has been mentioned specifically. But Gusii Water Company is not alone when they are told that 80% of your employees are in contradiction of the National Cohesion Integrity Commission Act. But it's not alone. There are many companies, Mr. Speaker, including my own Tana River Tawasco, Tana Water and Sanitation Company, Mr. Speaker, where they have totally ignored the provisions of the National Commission Integration Act. where you find the people who are employed are from one side. You don't find a proper mix. Small tribes that exist within what are the consequences of flagrant disobedience of the law? Mr. Speaker, we make recommendations in this Senate, but there are no consequences. People come, they tell us they will improve, and next year they come, they are the same, and there are no consequences. Mr. Speaker, I am asking that it is time we started thinking about tightening the laws on people who are flagrantly disobeying the law. Here, we have been told that in terms of financial management of these companies, you have many of them which are getting unqualified opinion of the Auditor General. Now, if the Auditor General says that the opinion they are giving in terms of financial management of your monies, the funds that have been made to you, is unqualified opinion, Mr. Speaker, and then no consequence is visited upon them. Instead, in the next meeting, they bring some documents, like the chairman said, they generate documents so that they tell you, oh, we were only told our opinion was only bad because we didn't have this and this other document. Now we have them. I like the stand Mr. Chairman has taken, that the documentations that have not been assessed by the Auditor General should not be accepted by the Senate committee. People should go through the processes, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, there should be consequences, because after we make recommendations, there should be consequences. I always feel very let down by some of these guys. ESCC sits in the Public Accounts Committee. They have a permanent representative there. And they are told there's this a problem, this a query. ESCC moves there, they sit there, collect allowances, and they do nothing, Mr. Speaker. And there are other bodies there. You find they come and sit, they listen, and recommendations are made. Instead of action being taken in real time, the reason that you are put in that committee so that you can take action in real time, nothing happens. Mr. Speaker, we want to see action on these audit reports. Consequences must visit those who are flagrantly breaching the National Cohesion Act. Water companies that are not following the law, Mr. Speaker, they should feel the pressure of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, a few people must be arrested for breaching the Public Financial Management Act. Mr. Speaker, if this happens, then we shall have some discipline. Aside from the investment, we need enforcement of the law, Mr. Speaker, so that we can bring some form of discipline and direction from the Senate on these water companies. We've been told water is life. And an appeal has been made here that senators, we must take interest in the management of water companies in our places where we come from. And I accept that. That's a good appeal. But we also need from the National Committee enforcement. If somebody is not doing his work, surely let a few people take personal responsibility. If this starts happening, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to create proper management of our water companies, and our people shall receive water, the water they have been using. They will be billed for water that they have been using. Mr. Speaker, why can't we create water tokens so that, just like electricity, I buy my token and I know that after I've used 1,000 or 500, I need to replace, instead of waiting at the end of month, alafu naletewa bili ya hewa. Mr. Speaker, time has come, we use technology to make sure our water companies are also functional. So we should not only invest in the infrastructure, but also in technology, so that people can pay for services that have actually been rendered. we are doing better in electricity, but we can also do good in water sector. And this means we must start focusing there as a Senate.
Senator Sifuna Edwin.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to begin by commending the County Public Investments Committee that is ably chaired by the Senator for Vihiga, the Honorable Osotsi. Honorable Speaker, I have had occasion to be present in some of his meetings, especially when the management of the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company was appearing before this committee. And I can assure you that I saw the sort of commitment by members of the committee, and especially the chair, to make sure that we right the wrongs in many of these water companies. Honorable Speaker, as you can see from the report, the chairperson and the committee have demonstrated in-depth knowledge and understanding of the issues that are facing these water companies, and they are making recommendations that will help in trying to resolve some of the issues that have bedeviled these particular water companies. I'm also very proud, Honorable Chair, that this committee has done almost 80 of those water company reports so far, and that we are at 100% in terms of addressing the question of ownership, which was not the situation that was obtaining prior to Senator Osotsi being the chair of this committee. So therefore, Honorable Chair, let me take this opportunity to thank the chair, the Senator for Vihiga, who's also my deputy party leader. These are some of the things that Kenyans have come to expect from the very high quality leadership from the Orange Democratic Movement. And we are setting the pace for other committees, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, allow me to address two things that have been raised by the committee, and they have had the chair make various references to the situation with water in Nairobi County. The first one, Honorable Chair, is the question of non-revenue water. And I know that from the discussions before that committee, Nairobi County, or the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company, is one of those companies with the highest non-revenue water. And various reasons have been cited. Honorable Speaker, in very simple terms, non-revenue water is revenue that somehow leaves the company, but is not billed, and the county does not receive money, or the company does not receive money, for that water. And one of the issues that have been cited is dilapidated infrastructure. Truth of the matter is, here in Nairobi, the water and sewerage infrastructure that we are operating on has been stretched beyond its capacity. And as the chair said, we are still relying on the original water and sanitation infrastructure when the city was actually built by the Mzungu. Honorable Chair, one of the things that I have never understood is, if you look at our laws, there is a law that is called the Urban Areas and Cities Act. This law, under sections 5 and 6, provides for a framework of cooperation between the national government and the county government, and especially the city county of Nairobi, recognizing the unique position of Nairobi City County amongst the 47 counties. This uniqueness arises from many things, including the fact that Nairobi City County is the capital of the Republic. It hosts the diplomatic headquarters of many countries. It also is a seat of government. Many national government institutions are actually situated here in Nairobi. Honorable Speaker, under that act, the expectation was that in the realization of the uniqueness of Nairobi, the national government would support development of heavy infrastructure or critical infrastructure like the water and sanitation infrastructure. But this has never happened. If you speak to the management of the water company and the county government of Nairobi in general, Honorable Speaker, the amount of capital outlay that is required to bring the sanitation and water infrastructure up to speed, Honorable Speaker, it is something that would require over 5 years allocation under the equitable revenue share for us to be able to do that infrastructure. As we speak, Honorable Speaker, the existing sewage network, for instance, covers only 37 or 30% of the total square area of Nairobi County. And Honorable Speaker, as you know, these has also, the past few years, I've seen a lot of rapid development. Rapid development in terms of housing. Very many new buildings are coming up, going up to 25 floors, hosting thousands of tenants. But it has not been accompanied by the commensurate infrastructure upgrade that is required. And this is why many of our water and sanitation infrastructure is creaking. So, Honorable Speaker, I continue to call on the national government to honor its responsibilities under the Urban Areas and Cities Act to support Nairobi's development of certain critical infrastructure, including our water infrastructure, Honorable Speaker, so that we can be able to meet the needs of the people of Nairobi. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the committee has highlighted the specter of illegal connections and what the chair has called outright corruption. There are stories we hear in this city, Honorable Speaker. Very serious allegations are made against the management of Nairobi Water City Company, the people who work there, that, Honorable Speaker, even though they told us that there is this program of equitable distribution of water across the city, that there are unscrupulous people within the company who are even themselves merchants of water, people who own water bowsers, who are aware of the distribution schedule, who will make sure that, Honorable Speaker, the running joke is that some of them have mjengos going on, and they tell their contractors, just wacha nifunge Nairobi West, and then I'll come and see you at the hardware, Honorable Speaker. Knowing that you are shutting water supply to Nairobi West, then your bowsers are available for the people of Nairobi West to buy water from you. So these stories, Honorable Speaker, unfortunately for us, we rely on other institutions, and we have complained even at the Committee of Public Accounts that unfortunately for us as a House, our role ends somewhere. That once we bring up these matters before these committees, we depend on other institutions of government, including the EACC, to be able to follow up and to be able to bring some of these matters before the courts so that we can stop these malpractices. I remember, Honorable Speaker, and I don't know if Chair of this committee can recall, that when the Nairobi Water team was before his committee, there was a discussion about the discharge point for sewage from these exhausters in Nairobi. And the management there could not tell you on average or in a day what are the identities of the trucks that have delivered or have discharged this morning. They cannot tell you the number of times a vehicle specific registration number has appeared there. And it becomes very difficult for you to manage revenue if you're operating like that. So, Honorable Chair, if we do not focus on this question of illegal connections and corruption within our water companies, we are doing nothing. And by the way, I used to think that cartels, for instance, in water, are shadowy figures who you cannot point out. Honorable Speaker, the people doing illegal connections are known within our communities. It is the inefficiency of the water companies that supports the existence of these cartels. Because the people there, especially in the informal settlements, have come to realize that the suppliers down there who have made illegal connections somehow provide a more reliable service than the water company itself. So if these issues are not addressed, Honorable Speaker, then we will not be doing anything. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, I want to just comment on something that the Speaker, the Chairman said, that the recommendations are arrived at by consensus. And in replying, I would also want him to advise if this consensus is just amongst the members of the committee, or if in fact the management of the water companies themselves share in some of these recommendations, because it is important that you get the buy-in of these stakeholders, especially on conflict areas such as the Kisii and Nyamira situation that you have referred to, the Bungoma and Trans Nzoia one. If there is no commitment from those stakeholders to resolve those problems, there's not going to be resolution of those problems. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the committee. I thank them for the support that they are rendering to all these entities for them to be able to improve. At the end of the day, Honorable Speaker, what the people of our counties expect is reliable water supply. If you look at the statistics, the people who in this city have access to water 24 hours are less than 40%. The rest of us, Honorable Speaker, we have to play pata potea with our water supply. And this is a situation that is not acceptable. And we have to call out the management of these companies. We have to call out the management of our counties to ensure that this is done. Nairobians have waited for so long, Honorable Speaker, because, you know, there's a project that we were following very closely on the Northern Collector Tunnel that was supposed to add an additional 170,000 cubic meters of water to our daily supply, which would have helped because we are running a deficit of over 200,000 cubic meters of water every day. We need to be updated on the situation with the Northern Collector Tunnel and all the other water projects that the people of Nairobi have been waiting on, so that we are able to assuage the situation and as well in the other counties. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I thank you and I support the position that has been taken by the committee.
Thank you, Senator Sifuna. I was really hoping that when you were talking about the honeysuckers, and you would have informed the House that they discharge their sewer in rivers, and we have that problem. Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity to make a few comments on the report of my sister committee of County Public and Investment. I think in the last session, Mr. Speaker, it was a joint committee, and I'm happy during that session, Mr. Speaker, we were not able to look at these issues, and I know they are very busy because they have to look back for almost, Mr. Speaker, from 2013. Because during the public investments, we could not look at public accounts in the last session. But I'm happy in the wisdom of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, we have seen the need to have a public investment committee. And I'm happy to, this report of 2019-2020, I'm happy with the pace at which the Public Investment Committee of this House is doing its work, led by the Deputy Party Leader of ODM, my brother and friend and neighbor, Senator Otsotsi, for the good job that he's doing, Mr. Speaker. And for us who interacted with Senator Otsotsi in the last session, he was a fiery legislator who almost mised one of our principles. But I'm happy nowadays he's more calm. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Amatsi Water Service Company Limited in Vihiga, Bomet Water Company Limited in Bomet County, Gusii Water and Sanitation Company Limited in Kisii, Nyamira counties, and this is where we have problems even in waterworks, Mr. Speaker. Remember, for example, Nandi, there are many shared, Mr. Speaker. Even in Nandi, we have a Lored Water and Sanitation Company that covers both Wazingishu County and Nandi and part of Lesos in Nandi's constituency. We have Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company in Kisumu County, Kwale Sewerage and Sanitation, Nyeri and Sanitation Company, Mr. Speaker, where our Munyoro village is. Mr. Speaker, on many aspects, I want to be very clear, Mr. Speaker, on many issues. I agree that most of our companies are on the red, water companies, even Kapsabet Water and Sanitation Company, Mr. Speaker. For example, Water and Sanitation Company is under in Nandi County, where we still depend on generators and electricity to pump water into Kapsabet town, Mr. Speaker, and its environs. We had expected that the government would expedite the construction of a Keben Dam, Mr. Speaker, which was upscaled to 24 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. I know there are a number of dams across the country, like Tuaga Dam. There is also Karmenu Dam, Mr. Speaker. There is Posta Dam in Bomet. There is also Itare Dam in Nakuru. Chemasusu Dam was complete. We had one, the Aror and Kimwarer dams in Elgeyo Marakwet County, Mr. Speaker. We have two rivers in Wazingishu. Mr. Speaker, we have the one of Sondu Dam that was supposed to cost 40 billion, that is between Kericho, Nandi and Kisumu counties, among other dams across the country, Mr. Speaker. So it is very important that water is life, water should be accessible, Mr. Speaker. If a society were to reach a point that water is more expensive than soda or any other beverage, Mr. Speaker, as a society we have collapsed. I know in northern part of the country, we still have challenges of access to water. And we remember we were being told that there is aquifer waters, especially in Turkana and that northern Pearl, where we were being told up to 70 years access to underground water, to especially regions, your county like Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, among other counties in the northern frontier, Mr. Speaker, is very critical. As a society, Mr. Speaker, when you don't have water for domestic use to drink, Mr. Speaker, there were, many years ago, there were a clamor for changes in reforms of water sector, Mr. Speaker. Even, Mr. Speaker, as we grapple with the challenges of access to water in eastern and northeastern part of this country, where ours is rain-fed, Mr. Speaker. We are lucky from where I come in Nandi. The reason why we don't have so much challenge of access to water for domestic use, drinking, and other usage is because of rain-fed kind of access to water, Mr. Speaker. In fact, even counties that border Indian Ocean, Mr. Speaker, there was even a proposal of Mzima Springs that is not sufficient. We need desalination of, because the auction water is salt, Mr. Speaker. Those are some of the access to create water in these areas, Mr. Speaker. But can you believe living in Nairobi is like living in some eastern or northern eastern of this country? Because, Mr. Speaker, water only appears in Nairobi like medicine, Mr. Speaker. No one is sure. That is why the thriving business of water bowsers in this city, Mr. Speaker, where at the moment there are many water bowsers. Even in when you drive in the Nairobi roads, Nairobi streets, Mr. Speaker, you will always spot water bowsers. It's a booming business. Because, Mr. Speaker, I don't know it was by default or by design, where the supply of water has collapsed in this city, Mr. Speaker. We were being told the northern corridor of Murang'a should provide sufficient water, sufficient water to Nairobi City, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you many Kenyans, 4 million plus residents of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, there is no difference with people who are living in Wajir or Turkana in terms of access to water. You have to buy water, which is expensive in terms of household expenditure, Mr. Speaker. You know, many families across the country, Mr. Speaker, spend 60% of their income on food. Food being inclusive of water, Mr. Speaker. I think that is the challenge as a country we must grapple with. And I think as a country, our people should be able to access clean and safe water wherever they are. 50 million plus, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we want to ask counties, because most of these water and sanitation companies are domiciled within counties, Mr. Speaker. We want to ask, Mr. Speaker, we notice, and I want to confirm that we don't have smart meters, where you still have clerical waterworks, the meter readers. I'm told the first president of this republic was a meter reader in this city, Mr. Speaker. And I know Senator Okiya Omtata might be aware, because he's good at litigation, that he was the meter reader, Mr. Speaker. So you get people, clerical, still go and read, Mr. Speaker. And I don't know, you can be a meter reader and become a multi-billion in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, when you go and they still read it physically using motorbikes, using access, and then write, Mr. Speaker, we need to introduce smart meters so that we protect and ensure accuracy in terms of declaring in the financial statement. And I think water sanitation companies should introduce, Mr. Speaker, smart meters so that you don't need to be there. Even Kenya Power and Lighting and Company, although that's another, it was one of the scandals that did affect this country was provision of smart meters in Kenya Power and Lighting Company. We need smart readers, smart meters, so that our people, we can know. So, Speaker, I was shocked that these meter readers come and read and then go and approximate how much you will pay. But if you had smart reader, it gives us the precision of a military marksman, what you should pay in terms of access, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, even it will also assist non-revenue water, Mr. Speaker. Because the fact that that water is lost, it means that revenue is lost, Mr. Speaker, in terms of non-revenue water. And therefore, we need to have even, Mr. Speaker, a technological era. Kenya is boasting of being technological savvy, Mr. Speaker. For example, we need to ensure that we have GIS, Geographical Information System, Mr. Speaker. When you have Geographical Information System, Mr. Speaker, GIS, it can tell us where is the pipe leakages, where there is pipe burst, the way Kenya Pipeline Corporation are using in terms of GIS. Say that if you are taking fuel from here to Eldoret to Kisumu, these pipes that KPC all the way from terminal, Kipevu terminal or wherever in Mombasa, they should be having a GIS to detect water leakages so that you prevent non-revenue water and loss of revenue because water is spilled or the pipes are burst, Mr. Speaker. So when we have GIS, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the committee led by my brother has noted this, it will assist in terms of ensuring that when you have geographical information system, it can detect the way we detect fuel when there is leakage. They can become precise, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that we can be able to detect any leakages of water or burst pipes in the system or infrastructure within. And I hope other companies, like whether it is coast companies, whether it is in Rift, whether it is in Nairobi here, it should be able to use GIS, Mr. Speaker. It is something that is easy. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, we should not be told counties or when they're upgrading to GIS that it is taking 104 billion. The way the ICT infrastructure upgrade was done in terms of the upgrade of NHIF and SHA, Mr. Speaker, because you know the funny part, and Senator Eddy will tell you, the funny part with an infrastructure of app, you need upgrade, you don't own it. It becomes absolute. So when you pay a lot, like the way you are paid 104 billion for infrastructure in terms of NHIF, then there is a big problem because that's software, you'll keep it improving, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of what I am happy that there is a report. I have seen there is a version, Mr. Speaker, of a mediated version of Water Act. This, Mr. Speaker, should resolve the issue of Water Trust Fund. You remember the amendment that was brought, what we call the Water Amendment Bill of 2023. The intention was to reverse, Mr. Speaker, contravening fourth schedule where water and management and water sanitation and access to water was left to counties, Mr. Speaker. You remember there's still animals called waterworks. Like now we have coastal waterworks. We have Lake Victoria North where Nandi, Kakamega and Vihiga and other counties are falling within. We have Lake Victoria South waterworks. We have Central Rift waterworks. We have Tana waterworks. We have Tana Adi waterworks, Mr. Speaker. These waterworks undermine devolution. In fact, these waterworks, Mr. Speaker, should be completely taken off. For example, in Lake Victoria North waterworks, where Nandi is, the headquarters in Kakamega, but when you go there, it's only, they have hired only one tribe, and yet it covers my county, Nandi, it covers Vihiga, it covers Kakamega, Mr. Speaker. I think was in Gishu was removed, it is now in Central Rift. We are suffering. Most of the development in Lake Victoria North, in terms of even drilling water in schools and hospitals, Mr. Speaker, and other community center. They are only drilled in Kakamega and Vihiga and other areas, but Nandi is left out, Mr. Speaker, because of perception that this region, Mr. Speaker, and it undermines Article 10 or principles of good governance and national values, Mr. Speaker. So when you look at Lake Victoria North, Nandi, when you look at the projects that come to Nandi through that waterworks as opposed to other regions, Mr. Speaker, it is very unfair. And I think it is high time we disband and ensure coastal waterworks, North Rift waterworks, Tana, other waterworks, any other waterworks in the country should be disbanded because they let the counties and the county governments run those waterworks under the water and sanitation companies. And I hope in the next report, the PIC committee must tell us that we need to bring down all waterworks because that is where the bastion of corruption is. Most of the dams that I mentioned, like Tuage, Karmenu, Posta, Itare, Keben, and other dams, Mr. Speaker, including Sondu, and including North Rift, and even Aurora and Kimeumana, are run by specific waterworks, Mr. Speaker. These same waterworks are becoming bastions of corruption and inefficiency and ineptitude, Mr. Speaker, at running, Mr. Speaker. Number three, most of the boards that run these water companies in counties and sanitation companies is becoming a big challenge. For example, even in Kapsabet, where I come from, Mr. Speaker, we don't have a functional sewerage and sanitation, Mr. Speaker. It was done by the Mzungu that is near Kiropket, behind Kapsabet town, Mr. Speaker. That even environment impact assessment has not been done by NEMA. In terms, Mr. Speaker, when you go, we are trying to do one in Nandi Hills Town that has been given to a contractor near Kosoiwa next to Nandi Hills Town, Mr. Speaker. The water and sanitation, in terms of sewerage and sanitation, should be efficient. Most of the sewerage and sanitation, Mr. Speaker, can you believe, most of them were constructed by Muzungu. I think Senator Mungatana said something that as Africans, we need to be careful. We believe that Muzungu money will change us. It will not change. If we want to remove the present neocolonialism of running, Mr. Speaker, this nation, Mr. Speaker, we need to agree, Mr. Speaker, and in terms of, we need to improve that infrastructure. I am happy that as we even do affordable housing, Mr. Speaker, we should also work with ensuring that we have a proper sewerage and sanitation for the affordable housing program, so that we have a complete circuit. So that when you live in a house, you are sure of access to water, you have access to sewerage and sanitation, because, Mr. Speaker, most of the sewerage and sanitation areas are next to public places, and public where people live, Mr. Speaker, and I think it is important that we do that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the regeneration of water sources, I have seen Nairobi regeneration program where the government is trying to hire most of the young people, Mr. Speaker, and ensuring that they have access. Mr. Speaker, number 5, of course, the issue of water service provider in terms of bulk water program, Mr. Speaker, purchase agreement, we must agree. Water should be accessible, Mr. Speaker. There is a song in reggae that a society becomes dysfunctional when there is nothing that is of development, Mr. Speaker. There is song that when you look outside the window, do you see anything to smile about, Mr. Speaker? When you see there are more prisons, and I think it is Lucky Dube, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, he was felled by assassin. Mr. Speaker, you remember the song No One Can Stop Reggae? And last time we could not say that because people of Azimio like Senator Manzo was using it, No One Can Stop Reggae. You remember, Mr. Speaker, I think in 1987, Peter Tosh was felled by the assassin, and Lucky Dube, Mr. Speaker, went to sing about No One Can Stop Reggae, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, last month, Mr. Speaker, we are remembering Peter Tosh because he's one of the biggest vibrant in terms of reggae genre, Mr. Speaker. I know, Mr. Speaker, people are listening like Senator Eddie are listening to Triomio, like Nimekuma, Kufinish Kumalo, Mr. Speaker. And I'm told there is a new one called Iyani, Mr. Speaker, where there is new mastingos, tutakufa kifo ya mende, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what we need as a country, even as we do regeneration of rivers within, Mr. Speaker, is important. We want to ask, Mr. Speaker, even in provision of bulk water agreement. And I want to see, Mr. Speaker, the mediation report, and I want to thank your office on the water mediation report. We must agree that let us stop undermining and reversing issues that, and Mr. Speaker, all of us who are seated here, you know, one of our senators went to become the deputy president, Mr. Speaker. Many people will become governors. My brothers and sisters are senators. If we do not protect evolution, you will go back to become a governor in Makueni when my brother has finished 10 years. Don't interfere with him in 2027. When he has finished 10 years, Senator Maanzo, you don't want to go and run a county government. That is a shell, Mr. Speaker. Senator Otsotsi, I know your governor is going for the last term. I know you don't see eye to eye, but you don't want to go and inherit a county government that is dysfunctional. Mr. Speaker, as we talk, the counties are yet to receive their disbursement, contravening Article 219, Mr. Speaker. Even in Garissa, Mr. Speaker, your governor is serving the second term. But your ambitions looks beyond the governor level, Mr. Speaker. But the point I'm trying to make, let us not be part of the people who will legislate ourselves out of business. So that we can, I remember Senator Ojila Yako, when he was the senator here before my brother, Senator Eddie, Mr. Speaker, and you know he was the only young man in Nyanza who campaigned with an helicopter. So it looks he is a man of means, Mr. Speaker. We used to tell the people like Senator Ojila Yako, the current governor, that we need to protect evolution. So that when you go back to become the governor, Mr. Speaker, you don't suffer. Mr. Speaker, let us be careful. Even on this report of water mediation version, I want to ask colleagues to be very careful. Senator Otsosi and your committee, you need to assist us. I have seen Senator Kisang, part of the PIC members, I've seen Senator Edi, who is a member of PIC, Mr. Speaker. Let us ensure counties function into the fruition, Mr. Speaker. Even the issue of running of the companies. I saw, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, you saw Northern Corridor that is providing water to Nairobi. They need to be compensated. Even in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, we are giving water to Kakamega, but in Tuia Bay, there is no water. In Kapkangani, water is no water, yet we give our water to Kakamega. You go to Chebara, where my brother Senator Kisang comes from. Water is taken to Eldoret. The people of Chebara are not receiving access to clean and safe water. Yet they are protecting the source of water that comes to Eldoret. We are protecting the water that goes to Kakamega. Muranga is protecting water that comes, Mr. Speaker. I know even in Garissa, it's only a kilometer or so within Garissa town, but there is no clean and access water, Mr. Speaker. Yet the Tana River is just passing outside the city of Garissa, but there is no clean and access water, Mr. Speaker. We must speak as a Senate that to ensure devolution works, access to water, bursary, adequate medical supply, passable feeder roads. That is how devolution will work with this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I want to submit, Mr. Speaker, and support the motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Faki Mwinihaji.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika pia kunipa fursa hii kuchangia ripoti ya kamati ya uwekezaji wa umma katika uchunguzi wao wa mashirika ya maji katika kaunti zetu. Shirika la maji la Amasi Water Company, Bomet Water Company, Gusii, Kisumu, Kwale, Nyeri na Wajir. Mheshimiwa Spika, maji ni uhai, na inasikitisha kuwa ripoti hii imeweza kuweka wazi kwamba kaunti zetu nyingi zina shida ya maji. Zina shida ya maji. Mashirika ambayo yamewezeshwa kusimamia maji haya, Mheshimiwa Spika, hawajui kile wanachofanya. Kaunti zetu, Mheshimiwa Spika, haziwekezi katika mambo ya maji. Wao wanaona kwamba kuna kampuni wanataka kampuni zilete faida kila mwaka, lakini hakuna uwekezaji wowote ambao unafanyika katika zile kampuni za maji, Mheshimiwa Spika. Hata ukiangalia bajeti za kaunti nyingi, utapata kwamba kwa mambo ya maji ni zero. Mheshimiwa Spika, kabla ya kuendelea, ningependa kutoa kusahihisha Senator Ososi aliposema kwamba ile sewage yote ya Mombasa inaingia katika bahari ya Hindi pale Kipevu. Mheshimiwa Spika, sewage ya Kipevu ni ya sehemu ya Changamwe peke yake, si ya Mombasa nzima. Sehemu zingine hakuna sewage, watu wanatumia yale mashimo ya kawaida. Kwa hivyo sewage ambayo tulikwenda tukafuatilia mwezi wa 5 nafikiri na Senator Ososi pamoja na kamati yake, ni ya Kipevu. Mheshimiwa Spika, na jambo la kusikitisha ni kwamba mpaka leo hakuja kuwa na maendeleo yote pale Kipevu. Vile ilivyokuwa tulivyokwenda, walisema kwamba pesa zitakuwa released na World Bank anytime tuweze kumaliza ile ukarabati uliokuwa unafanyika. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, ni masikitiko kwamba kufikia leo hakuna kazi yoyote ambayo imeendelea pale, na maji bado ya sewage yanaingia kwenye bahari. Mheshimiwa Spika, bandari ya Mombasa ni bandari ya kimataifa. Hatuwezi kuruhusu sewage iwe inaingia katika bandari yetu wakati kuna meli pale zinakuja, kuna mizigo, kuna vyakula vinaletwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, katika bandari ile. Hii marekebisho, Mheshimiwa Spika, ilikuwa ni mradi ambao umefadhiliwa na World Bank, na tatizo lilikuwa ni kwamba World Bank hawakuweza kuapprove invoice fulani ili waweze kurelease money, waachilie fedha za kuweza kutekeleza na kumaliza mradi huo. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jambo ambalo ningeomba kamati kama itapata fursa irudi tena waweze kuliangalia kwa makini, kwa sababu ni aibu kwamba kaunti yetu ya Mombasa inamwaga sewage katika bandari ya Hindi, ambao bandari hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, bandari ya Mombasa, ambao bandari hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni ya kimataifa. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kuangazia mambo ambayo yako katika ripoti hii, ni kuwa Fedha nyingi zinapotea, maji yanapotea bila ya kuuzwa kwa wananchi ama kwa wale ambao wanahitaji kununua maji yale. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa Kiingereza wanaita non revenue water. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia miundo msingi ya kampuni ya sehemu nyingi za maji, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni pipe ambazo zilijengwa nyingine kabla ya uhuru 1963. Mheshimiwa Spika, sasa karibu Kenya imefika miaka 60, pipe ni zile zile. Mheshimiwa Spika, zimejaa kutu ndani. Mheshimiwa Spika, maji yanayowekwa katika pipe zile, Mheshimiwa Spika,